Thank you, Scott. Thank you to the Zions family for allowing me to come. It is a joy to be here. I've been asked to talk about the nexus between the intersection between education and economic development. And the good news is I think there's a growing awareness that we can't do one well without the other. But a growing economy hopefully will create resources for schools, but more importantly, a command focus of transforming our schools will create a more sustainable economic environment. But I think there's maybe a better story that could be told and that makes this case, and it's Korea. For those more mature people in the audience today, I was born in '53, so I was not around when Korea in 1950. It was a country that was literally at the bottom. Korea has become a first world nation, not a bottom of the third world. It is a first world nation in every aspect. It is first world in its medium income. It has world-class businesses that compete with any businesses all around the world. So how did the Korean people do this? They made a command-focused commitment to education. They realized that the biggest resource they had was the intellectual potential of their own children. And that investment and focus has paid off. There's one test that measures how most countries do. It's called the PISA, P-I-S-A test, administered by the OECD. And it's given to 15-year-olds in math, science, and reading. And last year, Korea was 5th in science, 3rd in math, 1st in reading. The United States does not get better than 15th out of the 32, and it gets closer to 32 in math and science. And Shanghai students were number 1 in everything but reading, which was where Korea was. Way ahead in math and sciences than any other country in the world. But the United States in general spends more per student than any country in the world, by a long shot. That may surprise people who think that just spending more money is the answer to better educational outcomes. But we're not getting a return on that amount of money. A significant share of American students are poorly served by their schools and their communities. They don't even achieve the basic intellectual skills such as literacy skills and math skills. And often don't graduate. Sadly, a third of our kids don't graduate from high school at all. And this exacts a huge cost on our communities and on our society. As the governor mentioned, the difference between a college graduate's lifetime earnings, which on average are around $3 million, and those with a high school degree, around $1 million, is growing. It's huge, and it's growing each and every year. And those that don't graduate from high school at all have actually seen declines in real wages over the last 20 years that create what I think may be one of our great challenges, great societal strains where the haves and have-nots are purely based on education outcomes, and where people that may have aspirations have those dreams shattered because when they were young, they were not encouraged to do better in school. And so the net result of this is we have a challenge. That challenge is made worse by the economic challenges we face today. Governor Herbert was absolutely correct that college graduates' unemployment rates today in America are less than 5%. High school graduates are like 13%. Dropouts are in the 16% range. But here's a statistic that makes all of that perhaps even worse, which is half of the high school dropouts over the age of 25 are actually not in the workplace at all. Think about it. Less than half of the people who didn't graduate from high school even try to work now. It's a bad thing to create a society, particularly as open and free as ours, where you shatter people's aspirations by definition for a lifetime. That's where we are today, and that's why I'm passionate about transformation of schools, not tinkering on the edges, but transforming our schools to make them more relevant for the 21st century. This challenge will exist when the economy starts to grow again, which it will. The achievement gap I'm most worried about is the achievement gap when we benchmark ourselves to the world. McKinsey did a study that said if the United States could achieve the PISA results of Finland and Korea, that we would create some $1.3 to $2.3 trillion of additional economic activity just by raising the tide for all people. We'd be able to create 20% more economic activity than we do today. Why don't we educate every child to assure that they go on to get a college degree of relevance increase economic activity to the tune of $2 trillion that's taxed to create some $450 billion of taxes without raising taxes. So how should we do that? First, it's important to start early and to empower parents. Why early? Because if you can't learn early in life, let's face it, we are genius until we start acting like adults. That's my theory too, that young people are incredibly smart. Their brains are incredibly active, and if you engage them early enough, they'll be able to gain the ability to acquire knowledge far faster than if you wait and try to remediate after it's too late. We have to do it by starting with early childhood literacy-based education. In Florida, we started this by having universal voluntary pre-K, and we've seen a 25% increase in readiness for student populations entering kindergarten. But we can't stop with kids. We have to get to the parents too. Moms and dads are the first teachers in every child's life. And if you live in a state like Florida, where you have an incredibly large immigrant population, and increasingly, by the way, in Utah, you have moms and dads who may be literate in their native tongue, but struggle with English. And so I believe we have to expand family literacy programs as fast as we can as well. Which brings me to my second idea, which is that higher standards and measuring those standards really, really matter. In essence, you don't know if you're getting better if you don't measure, and if you set low standards, it's irrelevant. 45 states have embarked on an effort to establish standards that are higher, fewer, we have way too many standards, deeper, that require critical thinking skills to be able to understand them, and that they're benchmarked to the world's best. What will happen is that there will be a realization that about a third of our children are benchmarked to the world, that can succeed, that can meet those standards. A third. Another thing that I would say along with higher standards is that assessments that are accurate matter. Third, improved teacher quality. This is another one of those common sense things, I think, is pretty essential to improve learning. Teachers need to be treated as professionals, which means we have to depoliticize the profession of teaching. Teacher unions are political organizations. They're focused on improving the economic benefit of their members. That's what they're organized for. Don't be surprised when they do it with gusto. We live in a system that this education system is really adult-centered. It's driven by the adults for the adults, and somehow we need to move away from that. And one way we could do it is to turn the teaching profession into a profession. I believe that teacher salaries, and particularly future wages, need to be significantly based on what students achieve. If students do well, teachers should be paid more. If students do extraordinarily well, teachers should be paid extraordinarily well. The teacher should be paid more if they're in subject areas where there's huge deficiencies, like math and science. But when teachers are incompetent, we should be able to know that, and we should do what we need to remediate that teacher so that they can get better. But if they continue to underperform, they need to find another line of work. There's much that the private sector can do in this regard as well. There are lots of talented people that could transfer mid-career into the teaching profession. In states that don't allow that to happen, it seems to me, the business community ought to demand that those barriers of entry be eliminated. My fourth suggestion is accountability is what keeps progress sustainable. The sad truth is that failure in our education system often takes years to detect. But it's possible to set up a clear early warning signal that tells you when a school might be mediocre or, worse yet, failing. In 1999, we implemented a version of this, an accountability system called the A+ plan. And I believe without accountability, you're not going to have that constant pressure that the system needs so that complacency doesn't set in. All I'm saying is accountability matters, and the harder the edge that it has, the greater the sense of urgency to be able to change the things, to shatter the myths that exist that some kids can learn and some kids can't. Finally, in the 21st century, it seems to me that we need to embrace the digital revolution that is being applied in every aspect of our life. And so the digital revolution, I think, coming into the classroom is the last element of a transformational strategy. Imagine students learning at their own pace, in their own way, anytime and any place. And in Utah, that's about to happen. Imagine technology empowering educators rather than threatening them in a blended model where they harness this incredible content that could be made. Imagine the best physics teacher in Salt Lake City not just teaching to 10 kids for an AP physics class, but to every child in Utah. I am convinced, just as Dr. Christensen is convinced, that the disruptive innovation of our times for education is the digital learning revolution, and I hope that Utah continues to take the lead in this regard because I think it will create huge opportunities. And one of the best reasons, one of the things that I think offers the greatest hope for me is it plays right into the dynamic nature of who we are as a country. The next generation of American workers will have 11 careers, not jobs. It seems to me that a culture of lifelong learning accessed by digital learning is the way to go. If we do those 5 things, these are ideas that I think all together, embraced and executed with integrity, will create a gap, will narrow the gap that exists between us and Finland and Korea or whatever the country is that has achieved great things. We'll be able to restore our place over the long haul of being the most prosperous, the greatest country on the face of the earth. And I believe that people are waking up to this. I hope that you all are, and I wish you luck in being a partner to the folks that are already engaged in this battle. Thank you all very much.